I started.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you all for taking part of your afternoon to spend some time with us. My name is Braden Hexum. I'm the Residency Program Director, and welcome to Rush Emergency Medicine. This is really exciting for us. This is our first event, and you know, we've all been wondering, well, how is this all going to go? And like everything in emergency medicine, you know, you get the job done, and you show up, and you are ready to go, and whatever it takes, we'll make it happen. So this is really exciting. I'm looking forward to the next several webinars that we're going to do to introduce to you Rush Emergency Medicine, and hopefully some of you on this call will join us for our class next year. I would be looking forward to meeting you all in person. So bear with us as we go through this this next interview cycle. I know that you are all incredibly anxious and wondering how this is all going to go yourself. You know, I'm here to tell you, we will make this work. This will all work out for you. And you know, I found that life kind of will all work out in the end, and I know that you guys will all end up where you need to be next year. And you know, I hope that some of you decide that Rush Emergency Medicine is the place to be. My job tonight is to hopefully convince you that we've got something special going on here. But it's not just my show. I want to be able to introduce to you some of our other faculty and some of our residents, and have you guys ask some questions. I know that some of you had submitted questions already. I think we counted over 100 questions already submitted, and I think we've only had this invite out for a couple of days. So, so that's incredible. We're going to need a whole bunch of webinars to get through all of this. I think we'll try and tackle the most important ones first, and you know, we'll save as much as we can for future webinars. I do want to introduce my team and let them say hello, and then we'll kind of dive right into questions, because I think this hour will go by quickly. So I think we have our two APDs on the call, Scott Heinrich and Kasha Gore. They're my trusted compatriots. They help me get through the day. You will get to know them very well. We have a number of our residents on the call as well. Kaya Patel, Ben Magni, I see Vanessa Petrak, Nico Ramsey. Is there anybody else? There's so many of you, it's hard to...
Evie, one of our interns, is going to be joining us later as well.
And you know, this initial one was supposed to be about structure and leadership, but I think it's just so important that we have residents from all of our classes on these webinars, because this is really a team effort. And if there's one thing that I hope that you take away from today, is just how much of a community and a team we really are. I could not be here today doing this without Kaya putting this all together and making it happen. So thank you, Kaya, and all of the recruitment team for really putting together a great structure for this. I do want you guys to say hello so that you guys can match some faces with names, and then we'll, I guess, turn it over to Kaya. So Kasha, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi everyone, my full name shows up as my full name on there. So I go by Kasha, but I was born in Poland, and ergo the very long Polish name. I am the scheduling APD, so I deal with all the scheduling stuff. And so I can talk to that when it comes time for that. But I just want to say hi, welcome. We're really excited for all of this. It's going to be a strange season, but I think like Brandon said, we're going to get through this together, and it's going to be great.
Can you guys hear me? Yes. My name is Scott Heinrich. I just saw a bunch of you on the last Zoom thing. But I'm the Associate Program Director, born and raised in the northern suburbs, then most of my training college all in the Chicago land area. Glad to have you guys. Thanks for coming. I guess my focus is mostly I do our conferences, didactics, along with a bunch of other stuff. That's kind of my main focus.
Hi guys, I'm Kaya. I'm one of the PGY 3 residents. I'm also from Chicago, born and raised in the suburbs here. And I actually went to medical school at St. George's University, so I am a non-traditional IMG applicant. Really excited to see how recruitment happens this year, and really excited for our new class to join us, even though the intern just started. But yeah, really looking forward to it.
Hey everyone, I'm Vanessa. I'm also from SGU, so happy to help anybody that's going through the same process without a home base. I am originally from California, but my husband grew up in Chicago, so happy to be in Chicago, and this is where we plan to stay.
Everyone, I'm Ben Magny. I'm from the suburbs of Chicago. I went to medical school, University of Kentucky. I am very happy to be back here, though, with my family and at Rush.
Nico is also here.
Hey, sorry. Hey guys, I'm Nico Ramsey. I'm a PGY1. I grew up in Chile and I moved to Miami, went to FIU for med schools. I see some familiar faces, so good to see everyone. So my focus right now is just on not killing anybody and learning how to be an intern. So having fun so far.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that's everyone that's on so far. And like I said, I think a few more of our interns are going to be joining us after they get off work today. So kind of we just wanted to, again, I know today we were going to talk about program leadership, structure of our program, as well as didactics and curriculum. I just wanted to kind of open it up for Dr. Hexam to speak up, to speak a little bit about kind of, you know, what interns can expect, the intern year curriculum, and kind of just intern life, if you don't mind starting with that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kaya. So, you know, we started the program in 2017. So I came from, I had been in New York for a number of years as a clerkship director. So I had mentored many students going through the process of applications. And I came into Rush to help build the program. And, you know, I remember sitting around the room and talking to some of our passionate faculty about, well, what really do we need to do in this program that's going to be unique and different? How are we going to approach training residents that might be a little bit different than some of the experiences that we had as residents? I think if you talk to faculty who have gone through residency program in the past 10, 20 years, you know, there are some great things about it, and there's things experiences might have been, but I remember my intern year spending most of that year somewhere else, right? Where you're rotating on trauma and ICUs and floors, and the experience in the emergency department is doing other stuff. And I never really understood why that was. So one of the first things that we did in our curriculum really put a lot of focus on the intern year. And having you spend a lot of time in the emergency department. I would rather that you spend 8 months with us and have us get inside your head and help you figure out how to learn to be an emergency physician from us, rather than being up on L&D, being in anesthesia, being up in the unit, and having other specialists talk about emergency medicine. So that's something I think you'll see relatively unique in our program, is that we get you in the ED from day one. And you're going to be seeing sick patients, you're going to be participating in resuscitations, and you're going to be on the trauma team, you know, on your trauma rotations right from the get-go. And that helps us get you up to speed as quickly as possible. And that means that when you go off and do all of those other things on the other units, you've actually got some sense of what is it you actually need to know before you, as an emergency physician. So I think that's really the one principle that I think helps us stand out from other programs. So that's really the intern experience. We also have you go to a couple of other of our sites, and in a future webinar we'll talk about some of those. But we want you to experience not just our way of doing emergency medicine, but multiple ways of doing emergency medicine. So you're going to go to some of our other sites like Mount Sinai in your first year to kind of get a better experience of emergency medicine. I can kind of expand on that if there's other questions.
Thank you. Maybe Nico, since we're kind of on the topic of like the intern experience, if you want to kind of just talk about how your first month went on as like intern orientation and how you're transitioning into, working in the emergency department.
Sure, yeah. I think for a lot of you guys, there's two feelings. There's one that you kind of want to just jump right in and kind of get your feet wet and kind of learn everything trial by fire. And then the other part of you kind of want to be babied a little bit and kind of taught little by little. I think I've had a good experience so far for the last month and a half. I think there's been a good balance of that. There's a lot of autonomy and there's a lot of kind of teaching that happens during the shifts. So I've learned a bunch in like 2 weeks. And then the first month is actually a whole orientation, which has been really great to for you to get to know your intern class and just get your feet wet where everything is. Like you don't know where things are. We had a tour, which was nice. Dr. Hexam did that. This is where you find this, and this is where you find that. So, and you get to use your nurses, and so far it's been a really great experience. Right now I'm doing ultrasound, so it's a little bit different. But for the last probably 4 weeks, I've been having shifts, and it's been better than I imagined. So if you guys are lucky enough to come here, you'll have a great experience too.
Thank you. And Ben and Vanessa, I'm not sure if you guys have or want to add anything else.
So going off what Dr. Hexam said, we spent a lot of time intern year in the emergency department. I think it was like 6 months total, if not more, in the emergency department. You feel so comfortable as a second year resident. I'm seeing the new interns when you feel like it's a beginning of second year that you don't know anything, and then you turn around and you're like, wow, I really did learn all of this, and I feel comfortable with my presentations and my assessment and plan more than I did a year ago. So I think that's huge, that EM experience intern year, and I think it's really important to find a program that has that.
And I know, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, that's okay. I'll have to agree with what everybody else said. The experience in the emergency department is unbeatable. That you get to be in there for, I think we do at least 7 months in the emergency department. So it gives you a great experience.
And I know everyone always wants to ask, what is your trauma experience your intern year? Who gets to do intubations? Who gets to do all the procedures? Interns, you do a month of trauma at Mount Sinai. And if it's your patient, you intubate. So, our interns are very much involved in doing procedures, in hands-on, and taking full ownership of their patients. I guess kind of we can transition to kind of, what our shift structure looks like, how many shifts in a month, how many hours and whatnot. So Dr. Gore, if you kind of want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, you may hear my children in the background a little bit, so I apologize ahead of time for that. I cannot control that. So you essentially, just to kind of to lead into this, the shift schedule is in your intern year and your second year, you'll be doing 18 shifts in a 28-day block, because we do things in 28-day blocks. So we have 13 total blocks each year. And when you get to your third year, you end up with 1 shift reduction per block. So you end up doing 17 shifts in a block instead of 18. The shifts themselves are all 8+1s, so that essentially means you get 8 hours of picking up patients, and then you get 1 hour of overlap. So your next team comes on that 8-hour mark, and then you have that 1 hour to kind of wrap things up and sign out to the next team. And you're always paired with an attending, so your shifts are always going to start at the same time as an attending shift is going to start. And you have a very big variety of the type of shifts you do, in that sometimes you are working solo one-on-one with an attending. Sometimes you, as an intern, will have a third-year resident that you're working with, and it's more of a teaching shift. And sometimes you'll have an off-service person that's working with you. So we try to balance those out as much as we can. There's a lot of juggling that we do when we're making the schedule to try to figure out, okay, how many shifts does this person have in this area of the ER versus that area of the ER? So there's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm so glad that I have 2 scheduling chiefs to help me out with this, and they're wonderful. And so that's the the major kind of how we structure things. But I think one of the better things about our program that I'm very proud of is the fact that we do have really a team type dynamic where you're really are paired with that attending for that shift, so that you get to get good feedback from that specific attending at the end of the shift. And the way we do feedback essentially is at the end of the shift, you will get, you give your phone to the attending, and they'll do your shift card at that time. And so we have a really good culture in that we do get a lot of data for our residents, so they get really good data at their mid-year and end-of-year evaluations with a lot of comments, which is critical, because the more comments we can get, the better. I think that those were the major things that we talked about covering. What did I miss, Kea?
I guess, sorry, go ahead.
One of the things I think that to add what Kasha said is in terms of the structure of the shifts is a lot of people ask this question. We don't have graduated responsibility. So if you're the intern of the shift, you're the person getting the shifts. We don't say you can't see these types of patients. So I only do nights. I just worked my last 2 shifts I had was just me and an intern on the pod. So if there's someone coming in, the intern is the resident. They're doing the stuff. I may be in the room more than I would be with a senior, but the way the structure, the way it's set up with kind of one-to-one, especially, you know, some of the intern shifts are with the seniors. A lot of them are just one-on-one with the attending. There is no graduate responsibility. The intern gets to see all the patients that they can handle as they're going through.
And that's actually an important point, because it's another one of those principles that we kind of set out way at the beginning of organizing the program was, one, the focus on the intern year as being a really valuable must not miss opportunity, but also that we really focus on these small teams, right? And so the team may be an attending and an intern, or an attending in a second year, or an attending a third year and a student, right? There's almost never going to be an instance, although we did have one last night, that there is occasionally 3 people on a team, but that's about as big as it gets. And that means that all the sick patients in a zone are yours. And I will be expecting you as an intern to be seeing a sick GI bleeder, you know, on day 1. Now, the amount of lead time I might give you to get in the room and start doing your work might be a little shorter as an intern than I might our third years. But I think that's all part of the learning process. So we really wanted this to be a individualized learning experience where we let you grow on your own, and we kind of see what you can do, and we add in additional challenges as you develop, rather than some arbitrary PGY cutoff on what you can and can't see. So that's, I think, a really important point for us.
Speaking of, you know, we've been talking a lot about when you're the resident at the pod, that's your pod. Can Vanessa, maybe you talk a little bit about how our ED is structured and what it means to be in a specific pod, say A pod versus B pod versus C pod?
Of course. So, sorry, I'm just moving because my computer's dying. So we have our A pod, which is going to be your fast resource. That's where you're going to see like your lac repairs and your abscess drainage. And then you have a B pod split between 2 pods. It has a high resource where you're going to see like your codes, your sick GI bleeders. It's going to be a front wall where you can always see all of your sick patients and manage those. And then you have HR Flex, which is half high resource and half medium resource. And then C pod is your medium resource. And I like how it's always like an attending and a resident plus or minus a student managing the entire pod. So you get plenty of experience with managing 10 plus patients at a time potentially. So it's nice to, and you always rotate through. So you're not like a full month of C pod or a full month of A pod. You get a whole month of like various shifts.
Awesome, thank you. And then I guess maybe we can now talk a little bit, we had a few questions about how our didactics and our curriculum is structured and how we do conference. So maybe Dr. Heinrich, if you want to give a little bit of information about that.
Sure. So I'm going to give you guys the pre-COVID kind of structure, because obviously a lot of bets have been off during COVID. But in general, we try to make our conference curriculum a lot more interactive than, say, mine was when I was a resident. When I went through residency, and a lot of us have, is 4 hours of conference, 1 hour of M&M. It was the same thing every time. 4 1-hour lectures, the same lectures that have been given 10 years in a row. You see them 3 times before the residency is over, and you kind of can memorize all the lectures. I really wanted to get us away from that. And one of the good things about starting a new program is I got a blank slate. Brain essentially is like, go ahead and create the curriculum. So I could kind of do it the way we wanted to do it. And a couple of the focuses I think that I really wanted to do for us, and I think that help us a lot, is a big focus on ultrasound, a big focus on small groups, and a big focus on sim. And so we have a phenomenal sim lab with our director, Sarah Hawk. It's awesome. And so we figured we should take advantage of it. And so what we've incorporated is, again, this is pre-COVID. We're slowly getting back to it now. But we actually would alternate what we call in situ sim. And so for 2-hour blocks, actually 3-hour blocks, we blocked off a couple of rooms in the emergency department and have these like amazing live like mannequins. And we involve our nurses and techs and respiratory therapists. And we actually do real sim cases with real healthcare providers in the department. So we would do a pediatric arrest, and we would have the peds respiratory therapist there and the nurses. And we'd say, hey, we need the peds crash cart, and we'd actually bring the real crash cart for the peds. We knew where everything was, and the nurses would actually have to find the right mask, and we'd have to do all the right stuff. And so we would do one of those in situ sims every month, and then we'd also do another kind of 3-hour sim lab where we'd be doing more sim cases in the actual sim lab. And so those would alternate every other week. And then we'd also do about a 2-hour ultrasound block once a month as well. We're blessed. We'd actually hire standardized patient models. So you guys would actually take turns on the real models, looking through things with Dr. Gottlieb and Dr. Sundaram and Dr. Holliday when she was here, in terms of going over kind of real live ultrasound cases. And so that was, for me, it was a huge thing, is to be able to have not just straight 5 hours of us giving you PowerPoints every time, but to actually get out for those 6 or 7 hours, at least every month, of doing type things. We also do, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the foundations courses. We run one of those almost every week, separated by classes. And our third years are actually doing oral boards one-on-one with attendings during those time. And those are small group-based, case-based activities where they're, again, much more interactive. And we've also tried to, a little bit during our curriculum, is try to make more half-hour high-yield cases or talks rather than straight 1-hour ones. We do still have, obviously, a good smattering of the 1-hour core content ones, but I've really tried to focus on more high-yield 25, 30-minute talks and kind of more of those. We also have kind of incorporated, and it's gone really well with our other departments in the hospital. We do, last year we did 4 PEDS EM combined cases, or combined conferences, and we also did 4 IM combined conferences where we do 2 MICU cases and 2 CCU type cases. And those are with the other departments in the hospital. We bring in some speakers from both departments to kind of give us, kind of grand rounds type talks about, things that are important to both of those. So that's kind of the overall conference kind of idea.
Scott brings up, I think, the kind of the third major principle that we set out early on, which is we wanted didactics that we as faculty would be wanted to actually go to. We didn't want what we had experienced in many of our residency programs, which is, residents teaching themselves, faculty absent from most didactics, and that just wasn't a great learning experience. So we wanted didactics that were innovative and really interactive, and got you out of your seat and moving around. And so that's why, we spend a quarter of our time in the sim lab. Again, pre-COVID, but it also allowed us to really adapt and do some new things, right? We don't have this is the way it's always been, so this is the way it's got to be mentality. If it's not working, or we have an idea for a new didactic, we're all on board and we want to try it. We want to see if it works. And that's helped us really bring in some of these new things each year. And as we transition, between in-person learning and Zoom learning, we've been able to continue to try new things with didactics. What we've noticed is our faculty are really engaged. Some days we'll have, 8, 10, 12 faculty on our didactics because we're involving them in the clinical cases and foundations and sim lab. And these all require a lot of faculty to do and to do well. So you're going to really get to interact with them, not just clinically, but in our lectures and didactics as well.
And in terms of I guess this is the structure day. We've actually created a resident conference committee. And so there's 4 residents from each class that are actually on this committee. with me. We meet a couple times a year, and it's what's working, what's not working, what do you guys want to do different? And I believe, again, some of you guys have probably already heard me say this before, but conferences for you. I've already done residency, so whatever works for you guys, let's do it, right? Like, we have a blank slate, let's change it. If you like, this sucks, cool, I'll get rid of it. We'll try something else. And so we've actually, because of those meetings, we've actually added different things to our curriculum. We do a 5-minute journal club. So different residents assigned to do a different journal article, like a landmark article, and present it to everyone with attending, kind of sponsor with it. We also do a 5-minute EKG and a 5-minute kind of x-ray, where we literally just spend 5 to 10 minutes and go over those. And these are all things that were added solely because of the conference committee said they want to do them. And so we meet, and it's all feedback related. So whatever you think is working, let's try it. And I'm pretty willing to try anything. If it doesn't work, we scrap it and try something else.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Speaking of, kind of, you already talked about this, Dr. Heinrich, with the 5-minute journal club that the residents do during conference. Ben, can you tell us a little bit more about what other initiative residents have during conferences in terms of, do they get to lecture? Are there any projects that they're working on, things like that?
Yeah, so each year you get different responsibilities during conference. The first 2 years you'll have a 5-minute journal for one each year. And it's typically, like Dr. Heinrich said, a landmark case. It's normally pretty applicable to your daily practice. You get to read the article, do the research on it, and present it, and you serve as like the expert for those 5 minutes on that article. And you have your attending sponsor who gets to go over it, and it gives you that experience of presenting something to a large group with this journal in mind. You also, as you get into your senior year, you get to do some interesting cases as well, where you'll give a long lecture on an interesting case that you saw. And typically these are the really fun ones that you get to present, and you can go back and research it later on and follow the patient and see what happened. And that gives you that experience of presenting something a longer 20, 30-minute presentation, sometimes even longer than that, on an interesting case. The last thing we do is the residents run the M&Ms. So you'll go through a case where things may not have gone as well as they did before, and this is a good experience to have, where you can go ahead and say, hey, like, this patient came in, we could have done this better. And you get to kind of go back and work with the residents that was on that case, and then follow them through the patient's stay in the hospital, and figure out how could we make this better, and perhaps make an improvement in the system from there. The last thing we do throughout all 3 years is you're always on quality improvement teams. So you'll work on different initiatives. So we have 72-hour returns, we have an intubations one, and then a couple other committees where you'll go over pretty much some form of quality improvement. So the one that I worked on was the 72-hour return. So a patient presents once, we discharge them, they came back within 72 hours. Why did they come back? Was it progression of disease? Did we miss something? Was there something we could have done better? And you get to go through the chart, analyze that, and then your senior will present that in conference and say, hey, this patient came back because we missed this. We should have done this in this case to stop that from happening. And being able to present that in conference and let us run that and not have the attendings just lecturing to us, but actually be a part of it is pretty cool.
Thanks, Ben. So speaking about resident initiatives, I know a lot of you had submitted questions about what type of leadership positions exist for our residents. I can go through a whole list of them, and then I'll ask a few more questions. So, we have our House Staff Association that's GME wide with Rush. Last year, one of our co-residents, Vishal Jani, was the vice president of the House Staff Association. And this year, we're lucky again to have our 2 second-year residents, Ben being one of them, also on the executive board. We have our House Staff, the Rush House Staff GME Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. In previous years, we've had House Staff officers on this committee, and this year I am actually also on the executive board for the entire GME committee as well. Recently, we also started the Rush Emergency Department-wide DEI Committee, and we have a separate resident committee for that. Other resident initiatives and leadership positions, we have EMRA Rep. Vanessa has been our EMRA Rep for the past few years. We also have members who sit on the EMRA committees. One of our third-year residents, Dr. Nipur Shah, is also one of the e-board members of ICEP, which is the Illinois College of Emergency Physician. We have lots of residents involved with the specific chapters and committees of ICEP. So there's definitely lots of opportunities for residents to hold leadership positions, not just within the residency, but within Rush itself, within Illinois, and on the national level. I guess another question was what other, not just opportunities, but how does the residency expose residents to admin opportunities? If someone wants to talk about the admin selective, maybe we can get a little bit of information on that.
I'm not sure that any of you guys have done this one yet, so I'll take this. You know, I want to make sure that you get to accomplish your professional goals. So early, you know, in your first year, it might not be that you've developed a clear path for your career trajectory yet. And so we're going to be exploring some of the things that you are interested in. And is that admin? Is that a fellowship? Is that community medicine? And we'll come up with a plan for how do we expose you to enough of those areas for you to make good informed decisions about your career choices later on, whether that's jobs or fellowship or whatever. And so the opportunity to have 6 weeks of elective is really amazing. You get 2 weeks in your second year, a full 4 weeks in your third year. And we've been able to help craft electives and kind of even more so kind of longer term ongoing projects for you to be involved with to explore some of these career options. And so one of the more recent ones that folks have done is an admin elective. We are really fortunate at Rush to have emergency physicians at really all levels of leadership within the institution. Our CMO is an emergency physician. The acting dean of the medical school up until just recently was an emergency physician. Our CMIO is an emergency physician. We've got multiple members of our faculty who have been presidents of the Illinois College of Emergency Physicians. And so that network is really amazing. We can get you connected with folks who have done really remarkable work in hospital administration, in advocacy and leadership. And that mentorship is a really strong part of the program. And so whether that's a 2-week elective dedicated with that person or a longer term program where you're kind of working with them on either a research or operations improvement program, we've been able to get residents to do that. So that's just some of the opportunities of having access to emergency physicians that are really engaged in hospital leadership. And if you are interested, if this is your thing, you will get to know how a hospital really works. How do these decisions actually get made for things like COVID and a disaster response? And we've got EM docs who are doing all of those things.
Awesome, thank you. And then kind of just hitting it a bit about our committees. You know, whether you want to be in a Rush committee versus ISEP versus ASEP, you know, within our own program, we have our recruitment committee, wellness committee, DEI committee, quality improvement, we have women in EM, we have our program evaluation committee, we have conference committee. So there are definitely opportunities for all the residents to be involved in the residency, and whether it's more of a leadership position versus a member and just giving your input on it. Tons and tons of opportunities. You know, we talked a little bit about what we do at Rush and what we do in the state, but what about in Chicago? Maybe Vanessa and Ben, if you kind of want to talk about your experiences you've had from intraneal till now with the diverse patient population that we care for, not just at Rush, but maybe also at our rotating sites.
Yeah, definitely. So at Rush, you definitely see a diverse population, and you see really sick patients that are complicated. We have a lot of transplant patients that come into us, which is a very unique population, and you get used to seeing and dealing with those patients. And then at our community sites, it's very, very diverse, and especially at Mount Sinai, which is our trauma center. That's probably the most diverse population. And then we're working on other community sites as well. But I don't know if Ben wants to go a little bit more into that.
Yeah, you see people from all walks of life at each of our sites. I'm gonna repeat a little bit of what Vanessa said, but at Rush, you'll see people who have 2 different organ transplants on a bunch of different medications, and they have very complicated pathologies that require you to really do some thinking and talking with the attending and figuring out why is this person sick. And then you'll go over to Sinai, where you do have people who haven't seen doctors in decades, and they're coming on in sick and altered, and you have to figure out what's going on and help them. And it's great to see the variety of people that we get to work with.
And I think that was one of my favorite parts of going from intern year till now being a senior, is just in your intern year, you get to rotate not just at Rush, but you're out in some of our community sites, and just having that experience, like knowing, okay, the different patient populations these hospitals serve, the different types of setting the practices are, whether it's an academic center versus a community center, a low resource versus a trauma center. I think that was a fantastic experience to have going into intern year, and now kind of helping me decide, I've had almost 2 years of experience in this, what is it that I want to do once I'm done with my third year? And for traumas, I see this question, do any of the hospitals where you rotate at have level 1 trauma centers? So we do 2 years of dedicated, not 2 years, I'm sorry, 2 months, almost gave myself a heart attack there, 2 months of dedicated trauma. Intern year, you know, for the past 2 years, the interns have been going to Mount Sinai for trauma. That's separate from your specific EM or emergency department rotation at Mount Sinai your intern year. You do 1 month of trauma at Mount Sinai, which is a level 1 trauma center. And then second year, you go to Cook County trauma. So a second month of trauma, which Cook County is also a level 1 trauma center.
Going back a little bit to the community, I mean, one of the things that made me want to work at Rush is the clinical setting of being able to work with an incredibly diverse population. Many of you have Chicago ties and kind of know the makeup of the Chicago neighborhoods a little bit. But for those of you who are maybe joining us from further afield, I mean, you've probably heard, you know, Chicago is a very diverse city, but is you know, for many, many reasons, a very rigidly segregated city. And what is unique about us is the medical district sits on this crossroads of all of these different communities. So although we are an academic medical center and we see a lot of complex tertiary care, we also serve as a safety net. And that's even despite there being multiple hospitals within a short period of time. And that's because there is such a great need within the community. Illinois itself is an ACA success story. Most people in Illinois have insurance and therefore have a level of choice in where they actually want to go to seek care. And we have seen our volumes rise at Rush as a result of that. And as a result, there's been a newfound focus on the community and trying to serve the community within the neighborhoods that surround Rush. And so I am really feel privileged to work at Rush because there is such a diversity. It breaks down really about a third Hispanic, a third African American, and a third Caucasian. I speak Spanish every day. We see a large population of Spanish speaking only within that third of our population. We have a strong Polish population. We are seeing increases in West African, East African, Southeast Asian immigration to our area. And so we're seeing rising numbers of those communities as well. So you are really going to see the full spectrum of kinds of cases and both acute and chronic disease in our emergency department. And I think that goes similarly for our other sites as well.
One of the questions I see we have is, you know, do we work with other EM residents from other hospitals? Kind of what our experience is that when we're at Cook County Trauma, your trauma team is composed of both EM residents as well as surgery residents. And all of these residents come from different programs, whether it's Northwestern, Cook County Stroger itself, Midwestern, and then Rush. When we're in the Mount Sinai Emergency Department, we rotate with Resurrection residents. When you're in the SICU at Mount Sinai, your senior year, you rotate with residents from Swedish Covenant. And besides just, you know, the rotations, there is a citywide EM conference. It's called Windy City EM, and you get to meet, you know, it's with all of the Chicago and I think Illinois-based residencies come to this conference, you get to meet tons and tons of different residents, faculty members, and then there's the ISEP Career Day as well, which is typically in the fall, same type of experience. You're meeting people from different residency programs. So it's been great, right? Some of these residents, you meet your intern year and then you get to your career day your senior year and you're like, oh my God, hey, or you rotate with them and then see them later at Windy City EM. So it is a really nice experience that we still have. We get to meet other residencies and work with them. Yes, and like Dr. Heinrich said, second year Cook County residents do rotate in our emergency department. So that's also really nice. And before we open it up kind of just to some general questions, the last kind of bit I wanted to touch on was program changes. A lot of prospective applicants are really interested in what changes our program have already made, what our goals are for this year, and what we anticipate in the next few years. So maybe our program director and our APDs can answer some of your questions for that.
So sure. As a relatively new program, we've graduated our first class now, and you guys would be you're interviewing and matching into what would be our 5th class of residents. I kind of look at this as listening to resident feedback and suggestions for change is really a survival mechanism for us. We would not be improving our program or becoming the best program in Chicago if we weren't actually hearing what your experiences are like and what do we need to be changing. And so it's really critical that we identify what are the rotations, what are the experiences that are no longer having educational value, and can we replace those with other ones? And we've made several changes. Every year I feel that there's always a rotation that needs improvement that we can do better with, and we've replaced those with other options. Early in the first and second year of the program, we identified that being in an academic medical center, you miss out on a lot of the aspects of community emergency medicine that are the bread and butter of what we do. And so we sought out and found outstanding partner sites that have become core parts of our residency program. So that's why we've been talking about Mount Sinai and Rush Copley as being very different experiences from what you're going to see at Rush. So those have been some of the major changes. More recently, based on feedback, we added a chief, right? We found that for everybody's wellness, both our chiefs and for the scheduling of residents, that it's nice to have a second look at our schedule and making sure that we're doing this in a process that focuses on wellness. We've implemented a quality improvement program where no longer do you have to go seek out your own quality improvement project. You are all put into a lottery where you're going to be part of a quality improvement group where you actually learn some of those skills of patient safety and quality improvement. So those have been some of the major changes that we've had recently. Going forward, one of the things, I had a meeting today with our critical care team at Rush. We want, and starting in September, there is going to be a change in the ICUs at Rush so that one of the ICUs is going to be primarily an EM-directed team, and that's going to be a first for us. At the beginning of the program, we started essentially rotating along with all the other residents in the MICU and the CICU. And it just is congested. There's just a lot of learners, right? And as we've realized during COVID, we need more critical care space. So in that expansion, there's going to be more opportunity to take a core role as an ICU team. And so we're going to see some changes in the ICUs in the next year. So I think that will really improve the acuity and the kinds of procedures that you get to do. And I'm really excited to see what happens with that. Do others have other thoughts about changes that we've made or will make?
What hasn't been changed? I'm kidding.
Yeah. Right.
I'm the PE-CISO Program Evaluation Committee Chair, and so we have these meetings, but I feel like in between these meetings, we're constantly, evaluating and reevaluating things. So like, at our formal meetings, we like have a big meeting about like what's going on, what do we need to put on our evaluation for the coming year. I think we're constantly addressing things as we go, or we have very regular leadership meetings with our chiefs. And then they're really the ones that are bringing us all this feedback from our residents and telling us what we need to address. So our schedule has changed numerous times to figure out what is our best team structure. And I think that it's a great, I think we have a great community that is very responsive to this. And our residents kind of go with the flow too. They're when during COVID times when we had to switch the schedule around a million times, they were our rock. And so I think if you come to this program, you better expect that you're going to see changes, and it's something that we just are. It's part of our culture.
And kind of one of the applicants had asked this question regarding changes made and changes to come. Have there been any steps made to increase diversity in residents and faculty to better reflect the patient population in Chicago? I guess I can start with this one. So we recently, did create an emergency department-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. And this is not just for the residents and the ED attending faculty. This includes nursing. This includes our environmental services, diagnostics, EKG, patient care technicians, our pharmacists. It is social workers. It is a multidisciplinary effort. We have created a curriculum called DIRE, which is diversity, inequity, racial equality curriculum, which is a 3-year curriculum that the residents and faculty are going to be working through, and it's open to the rest of our ED staff. And we're, within the resident specific committee, we just had our first meeting and are coming up with our goals and what we would like to see in terms of increasing, underrepresented minorities in our program, as well as diversifying our staff. So there's definitely a lot that has already started, or a lot that was already in place, and a lot of changes we hope to be making in the next few years.
And prior to this, even one of the things that we have done is we blinded our interviewers to board scores. We actually had several meetings over the last couple of years about, hey, what's the research out there about increasing presence of underrepresented minorities in residencies and in our faculty, and what kind of initiatives can we do. And so we created a scholarship for underrepresented students for the elective rotation that is unfortunately this year put on hold. But those are the initiatives that came out of our meetings and research, essentially. And so we are going to continue looking at that. And I think more research will come out. I think that's one of the things that has, it's one of the things that really needs extra research. And how can we apply that research is what we're going to have to reassess and continue, obviously, reassessing as we go forward.
And Destiny,
There's been
a question too. Oh, go ahead. Destiny, thanks for that question. I can tell you just, honestly, that's one of our biggest goals is to increase our diversity of our department as a whole. And I can tell you that our kind of faculty recruitment, that's also one of our focuses as well. And so we are trying to do as much as we can and as frankly, as best we can to really increase diversity of our department, including the residency as a whole. It's definitely been a focus of.
There's so many great questions. I wish I could answer all of them, but I think this one does deserve, some time and focus, because, when we embarked on starting the program and we talked about vision and all of the things we wanted to accomplish, I feel like we've accomplished so many of the things we set out to do 4 years ago in starting the program. But one of the things I feel like we have not done yet is to have a program that is exactly what you said, reflects the diversity of our patients. And that it's not lost on me that the 3 faculty who are here do not necessarily look like the patients that we serve. And it would please me to no end to recruit leadership into our program that looks as unlike me as possible. And I think that that's a goal that we had set out years ago. And this is really hard. Some of the things that we have done is, I made a clear commitment early on that 20% of our interviews would go to URM candidates. And that is something that we've stuck to throughout. We have brought folks in to interview with us. We've had additional mentorship and follow-up with those. In order to try and convince people to take a chance on us. It's really hard as a new program to say, we will mentor you and we will work with you, and we believe in this. It's another thing to get people to actually match with us. And so this year we've actually done really well. 5 of 12 identify as underrepresented in medicine, and I think that that's a big step forward. We've got a lot of room to grow though. What I do appreciate about Rush is just what a commitment that we have made to this. And this legacy goes back, even 150 years. Rush was the first medical school to graduate an African American who graduated in the United States, and that was in the 1850s. We were giving same-sex benefits in the 1970s when most people didn't really even know what that meant. And so this is something that Rush has stood by for a very long time. The kind of catalyst recently has really propelled us to really refocus on what are the things that we're doing well, what are the things we're not doing, and can we improve that recruitment in other ways. Our faculty itself, I think, is rather diverse. We have more than 50% women in our faculty. We have, I think, a wide diverse, maybe not hitting all of the URM targets, but in kind of overall diversity, I think that our faculty does better than most. And so we've got a ways to go, but it's a commitment that I think we've all made.
All right, so I'm just gonna ask, a few participants had sent in questions during the chat. So I guess this one goes out to our PD and our APDs. Everyone's really nervous about COVID. Everyone who's not from Chicago who has shown interest in our program and may have not been able to rotate with us, how can they show that they're really dedicated to this program and that they're interested in this program? What can they do?
I'm going to let Braden answer this first because he's most likely to get all the emails. So I'm going to let him answer this one.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, you guys are doing exactly the right thing right now, which is, participating in our webinars, expressing interest, and really making it known that Chicago is a place that you want to be. Looking ahead to the application season and what it's going to be like to review all of your applications. Some of the things that we've talked about is how do we identify folks who are very serious and interested. I want to know in your personal statement, what is it that really makes you feel like this is the right program? I don't know that you need to personalize your personal statement. I know that's not what I'm asking, but I want to know more about you. What is it that's unique about you that will make you a leader and a great resident? I think if you look at what our residents have done, we take non-traditional applicants, we take IMGs, we take DO, we take people who have done other things in their life. We've had people who've had multiple other careers and have re-pivoted back to to medicine in some ways. And that's, I think, a benefit to us that we take people who have had real life experiences outside of medicine. And I want to see that in your personal statement. I want to know more about you as a person. I don't need to know necessarily why emergency medicine is amazing. We all know emergency medicine is amazing. I want to know why you are amazing.
And kind of touching base on the IMGs, we have IMGs in our program. I graduated from St. George's. Our first graduating class had a student from St. George's, as well as Saba, Vanessa in our second year classes, also an IMG, and then we have an intern match from IMG. So there's definitely opportunities for IMGs to come here at Rush. I know there's a very specific question about a non-US citizen IMG. I don't know if Dr. Hexam again, I know a lot of these questions are going to you as a program director, but if you want to just maybe briefly talk about that.
Again, where you went to school is less important to me than, are you going to be a hard worker? Are you going to be a great physician? Are you going to care for your patients? And thankfully, that was the one thing I said, I need to be able to take anybody that I think is going to be really good. And I do not want to be restricted. And I know that that's an issue with some programs, that they can't take visas, or they can't or will not take applicants from other schools that are not U.S. based, and that's not an issue that we've had that I've had to face. I want you to be the best physician you can be. So we've had folks, we've had 3 residents who have had other residency experiences, who either were in family medicine or internal medicine, or have been many years out in psychiatry practice and have come back to emergency medicine. I think those are really valuable experiences that add breadth to our classes.
Another question we had come in was, what resources are available for residents with families? Kind of anyone can answer this question.
I can say that a lot of us have families, and I think Evie's on right now, so maybe she can start and say how she's been received so far. But we have a lot of young faculty too that have a lot of young kids. We all are very understanding of all that. I can talk to from the scheduling perspective. There are things that come up, and I think hopefully the residents can speak to this, that we're very accommodating when it comes to emergencies, scheduling issues. We have people that are like, well, I really need this this very specific thing, and a lot of times we can make things happen. And so from a scheduling / emergency perspective, we get it, and I think there's a lot of support from people who are in the same shoes. If you do have families, we all are kind of very understanding of that. I don't know, do you guys want to add to that?
I have felt very supported, and it's really nice, especially having so many young faculty that also have kids. Like, it's a really nice way to relate to the attendings, when sometimes that can be kind of intimidating. But I think, emergency medicine is such a great lifestyle specialty anyway, and the culture is really so supportive that, and especially at Rush, I think that culture has been really nice, and everybody's interested in kids and in your kids, and everybody's interested in making sure that you are as well as you can be, whether that wellness is with your family at home or if that wellness is something different. Rush supports that.
One of the great side effects of Zoom is that I've gotten to meet so many of my colleagues and residents' kids through and pets too, who they're all in the Zooms, and it's great. We have an upcoming webinar on wellness to kind of talk more about some of our programs and some of the events that we do. But one of the things that I think we look for in a class is, we want to create a class that's going to go through this process together. You're going to spend 3 years together, and I think the more diversity and experiences and backgrounds that I can put together in a single class, the more that you guys are going to learn from each other and depend on each other when things get really tight. And residency, it can get tough. There are going to be days that are harder, and you're going to lean on your classmates. And I think that there are very few of these kind of siloed areas where people are only in their own group. I think that we try to make people cross their groups a bit more, so that we can learn from each other. And I think that all adds to the wellness.
Yeah, we love dogs, we love cats, we love babies, we love kids. We've gone through engagements and weddings together, proposals. Some of our co-residents have had babies through residency. We've seen our faculty members have their babies. So it's really been awesome in terms of, the support for our own residents, our faculty, and families. A few more questions I just wanted to kind of get through. There was a lot of interest in the global emergency medicine and community health, and whether we have options for wilderness medicine. So if anyone wants to talk about that really briefly.
I can do the wilderness one really quickly. So I just wrote it in the chat, but I'm actually the Wilderness Medicine Interest Group Advisor for the med school. We don't have a formal program in terms of rotations or much topography at all because it's Chicago. But we do have some connections in wilderness medicine. People I trained with before have done fellowships and they come in to speak with us. We've had people come in with gamma off bags for altitude medicine. We've had race doctors come in. So we have certain connections, obviously, with that. We do have, and what was going to happen this year pre-COVID is a couple of our third years, it wasn't fully going to be wilderness, but it was going to be actually rural medicine. I have some contacts in the Seattle area. They're actually going to go there to a very rural ED to do rotations there for their electives. And so there is the option to do electives in wilderness medicine. And I've actually talked to a bunch of the residents about potentially kind of options for that. So despite the fact that we are in Chicago, there are some options. A lot of our residents go rock climbing all the time at the gyms. I used to pre-COVID, and there's a lot of stuff in the area too. But in terms of actual fellowship, we don't have one by us, but are certainly happy to help you get to one.
In a previous academic life, I did a lot of international work, and coming to Rush, it was one of the goals that I had for our young program to develop a program for global health and international experiences. We partnered with Rush Global Health, which has been working in the Dominican Republic and Haiti for many years, both on surgical missions, but also in establishing longitudinal primary care programs. We've identified that there's a residency, an emergency medicine residency program in Santo Domingo that we've partnered with, where we, especially now with COVID, we've provided some more kind of teledidactics, where we've helped support some of the didactics that they have requested of us, specialty things that they don't have access to as much, especially in toxicology. We hired Vinu Disaniaki, who's one of our faculty, who did a very unique international emergency medicine and toxicology combined fellowship with Stroger and UIC. I don't know if anybody else has ever done this, but she has taken the lead as one of our international experts, and Sobia Ansari has partnered with her to create a social and community medicine program, which is a kind of an extracurricular track that meets, I don't know how often they meet it, maybe twice monthly, to kind of go over topics and kind of discuss areas of common interest. So there's a very vibrant global and social medicine program here at Rush.
Yeah, we try to meet twice monthly, and then we have like asynchronous activities that are on Canvas. We have the opportunity, at least, pre-COVID, we'll see what happens with COVID and post-COVID, actually going to these sites, right? We've had residents go to Haiti, Dominican Republic. We had a resident last year go to Hawaii for a rotation. So these opportunities definitely exist. I just want to get through 2 more questions, and then, just in the interest of everyone's time, we'll call it a night. There was an applicant who had asked about, are there any opportunities for residents to kind of get certified in any language services when they're here during residency?
I saw that question there. It's a great question, actually, because I don't know the answer to it. I know a lot of our residents that are bilingual, if they feel truly comfortable translating, do it on their own. I don't believe they haven't gone through a formal actual translation service. I speak mild to moderate at best Spanish, and generally don't feel comfortable using it because I don't think it's necessarily fair for me, for our patients. So we have pretty great 24-hour translation services. But I know some residents care much better at it. But it's a great question. It's something that if you were coming to the residency and ask about the formal translation courses, we would figure it out. Let you know I don't know about it yet.
Thank you. And then kind of just this last question, again, going back to COVID has really upended the application cycle, and whether or not, if we're going to be doing a little bit more of a pre-screening process for the applications, or are we looking at a more holistic approach, I think. And this is a great question for all of our students, and they'd like to hear about it.
So we kind of covered it a little bit in the chat, but for those of you that are actually, watching us, in general, our kind of rule is we do a holistic approach. We actually don't screen out by board scores. We just don't do it. We understand that the test may not be perfect and people may not do perfectly on the test. And so we'd rather get people that we think are going to be great physicians. The board scores are a very small part of the overall system we use. We like to look at experiences and who we think are going to be successful physicians by us and are going to represent us well and become physicians that we're proud of. And I don't think, and we think as a rule, that your board score doesn't define you for that. Just because you may not have done well on one test doesn't mean you're not going to be an awesome physician. So we actually divide up all the applications and look at every application. Not gonna lie, it's a lot of applications. I'm sure it's gonna be more this year with COVID, but we strongly believe that it's worth the work to look at every application rather than just automatically knock them out.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for our panelists for discussing and coming out tonight to answer all of your questions. Thank all of the applicants for joining us and submitting your questions. I'm going to quickly screen share. Hopefully I do this right, to just put up our flyer so you can see the rest of our upcoming events. Today was kind of just a general discussion about everything. We are also going to talk about why Rush, and this will mostly be residents and talking about our Rush experience. We'll be going to go into more detail about the sites and rotations and what skills and procedures we get to learn, life in Chicago, a little bit more about the selection and application process, as well as our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts mid-September, a whole session dedicated to wellness. Later in October, we're going to be talking about mentorship, jobs, and fellowships. I know a lot of students had submitted questions about where do our residents end up afterwards and what fellowship opportunities exist. So we'll have some of our fellowship directors and faculty who've done fellowships come in and speak about that. And then we'll end our series with social and community health. But again, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We hope this was helpful. I will be sending out an email with the recording link to everyone who wasn't able to make it. Even if you were and you just want to have the recording to kind of refer back to a few things, just let me know, and we hope to see you guys soon. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a great night.